There he is. That's got to be a crappie. Let's back off just a little bit. I'm gonna have to be super quiet if I'm gonna catch any right here. I'm gonna have to net. I'm gonna try to flip him, folks. There we go. I'm not gonna do that no more because I have a tiny hook on this particular jig right here. It's a size 8 hook. All right, folks, we're going to talk about it just a little bit, what's going on and what I'm going to have to do to catch a few of these fish, or what I think I'm going to have to do. That is my first crappie, and it didn't take me too long to find him. He's a little bigger than what I thought, actually. He's about 10.5 inches probably. Let's let him go. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. The squirrels are covering this little mountain right here. They are playing. The leaves is a rustling because of the doggone squirrels. Okay. Well, good morning, folks. It's Richard Gene, the fishing machine here. Right now, the surface temperature is at 54 degrees on top. I'm in 5.5 feet of water right here. You know, folks, through the years, I've always said, any time of the year, it don't make any difference, whether it's winter, spring, fall, or summer. You're going to have crappie at different depths in your lake. They're not going to all be doing the same thing. They're not going to be all in the same depth of water. Now, I focus primarily, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, on shallow water crappie, or mid-depth water column crappie. I don't fish deep a lot most of the time for crappie. Now, the water is extremely low. Here in the Tennessee Valley, just like a lot of places across the country, we're in a drought. Because of this drought, the fish are still here, but they're extremely tight to cover. Okay. A lot of these crappie, a lot of professionals says that they'll leave the shallow water and go deep when you have situations like this, low water conditions. That's not true, folks. It's not true. Shallow water crappie are just like shallow water bass. You'll have bass that prefer shallow water over deep water. They're the same. And what they do is they'll move up into treetops or very close into cover or very close to cover. And that's all they are to it. So I'm using 2-pound test line, little bitty floater, okay, and a slab tail 1.75, which is probably my favorite when it comes to slab tail baits. That's a blue and white combination. And I've tied that, because I'm using 2-pound line, I've tied a Palomar knot into this little jig. Size 8 hook in this jig. So when I set the hook, I need a limber rod, which this is a limber rod. This is an old Eagle Claw rod, 6 feet long, fiberglass. And I've got a Daiwa Fago 1000 reel. And now let's catch a crappie before the wind puts me right on top of that brush pile. Ooh, that's a big crappie. That's a big crappie. Let's get him out of there if we can. I got to get used to fishing with this 2-pound line, because I'm going to tell you, that's a big crappie. That's a big son of a gun. That is a fighting son of a gun. He's either just big or mean. See how I got him hooked. May have just been the way I had him hooked. Let's get this net. Doggone, that was a fighting son of a gun. It's just a big crappie. Look at there, what a fish. Golly. I didn't think I was going to be able to subdue him. Oh, there's a big word right there. Subdue. That's a very, very big word. I'm going to tell you, when I set the hook into him, he gave me a fit. Now, I'm not kidding you. But that's a beautiful fish. Look how thick he is. That makes some good fillets. But we got plenty in the freezer. Let's be conservationist about it. Let's let him go. Beautiful fish. I was wrong. I was bad wrong. There may be a couple, 2 or 3 big crappie right there. I'm gonna work with it a little bit. You know, folks, there's a lot of different facts when it comes to fishing. But when it comes to my fishing, oftentimes what I look for is treetops. And one of the best ways I know to catch these fish is by using a small cork, small jig, light line, and by relying on this cork for controlled depth. Very, very important when you're talking about crappie fishing. Now, the thing about fishing treetops is some of these tops, the crappie may be suspended 3 feet deep. Some of these tops, the crappie may not be but a couple feet deep. Some of these tops, especially way back up in sloughs or cuts off of the main lake, may not be over 16 inches deep in the water column. That's why this little float is so important in the fall. And a lot of times I'll use it in the wintertime. You can control your depth when you're looking for shallow water crappie. Now, as far as the depth goes, how do you find that depth quickly? You just have to move that float up and down your line until you get bit by a crappie. Because a lot of times, let me explain this. If crappie are not active, you're going to need that jig right in front of his face. If they're just halfway decently active, you need to fish above him, which you need to fish above crappie slightly anyway, unless they're just not biting. That's when you need to really adjust that jig to where you're right in front of his face. But if they're just halfway active, they'll come up a couple of feet to grab a jig. So depending on the water clarity is how much room you have to adjust that cork. If in other words, if the water clarity is extremely clear, well, then these fish will come up farther up because they can see better to hit this jig. If the water clarity is a little bit murky or muddy, you're going to have to pinpoint and keep messing with this float by adjusting it up or down to get a feel for where those crappie are in the water column, to where you can catch more of them, folks. It's hard to explain, but y'all know what I'm talking about. When it comes to crappie fishing, there's a lot involved in it, and one of the things is by using instinct. Instinct is very, very important. A matter of fact, instinct is so important when it comes to fishing for a lot of different fish. If you don't have it, you're not going to do that well, you know. Instinct is a lot better than live scope has ever been and ever will be. There's no doubt. There's fish. My. That's a big fish right here. Big old crappie, folks. These fish are no doubt suspended about 3 feet deep, over about 11 feet of water. Big crappie. Okay. My. If only Bursell was here. Yeah, what a fish. Gotta show that one, y'all. No doubt. Folks, that's what I'm talking about. Big crappie right here. 3 feet is the magic depth on this particular top. Now, it took me a while before I could figure out how deep, and that's the key to crappie fishing, especially if they're suspended up in these trees. You have to change your depth constantly. And when you catch a couple fish, well, you've got it. You got it going on then. Let's let him go. There he goes, boy. He shot off like a rocket. There he is. That's a good one right here, folks. I'm going to start doing that a whole lot. I'm going to make a cast out there, then turn my head, then turn it right back. Boy, that fish is fighting. My. It's a good crappie right here. Now, I've had to change my depth because I'm fishing over deeper water here in this tree. Golly, what a crappie. My goodness. That is a big, pretty fish right there. That is a pretty fish. Well proportioned. Now that fish was around 3 feet deep. Fishing over a little deeper water, I'm fishing over 11 feet of water, and these fish are suspended a little deeper, Let's let him go. Let's see if we can get it back in there just right. Okay, right there. All right, let's let that jig fall. And there he is. There he is. I knew it. They're laying right up under the trunk of that tree. I mean, right up under the trunk. He couldn't stand it. That jig fell straight down. And he'd come out from under that trunk and eat it. That was a proper presentation for that fish, the way he was set up. Let's let him go right here. Just a good fish. Good solid fish. All right, folks, we got it done today. Caught some good fish. Caught some real good fish. Despite the water being low, didn't make any difference. Didn't slow us up. Because this is a deadly way to catch crappie. There's no doubt about it. When you're targeting shallow water crappie, this happens to be one of the best applications that I know. Controlled depth. And remember this, you cannot fish too slow using this technique. I want to say God bless each and every one of y'all. Thank y'all for all the great comments. Hey. And remember, go fishing when you can, because it's good food.